So, what are the investigations of this false cyst, pancreatic pseudocyst? Investigations are two. Ultrasound, of course, yes, but it has to be endoscopic ultrasound. And you have to take aspiration of fluid, okay, which will reveal high level of amylase. And second investigation is CT scan. So we are mentioning no labs, only two imaging. Endoscopic ultrasound, aspiration fluid, which will reveal high level of amylase. You can see, like amylase is an enzyme, so high level of enzyme. And CT scan will show large pancreatic pseudocyst. You can see in the photo. And also, there is a surgery mentioned, cystogastrostomy, which we will discuss in the treatment. So, the treatment of pancreatic pseudocyst. Here, see, usually when we hear a false cyst, we do not worry about it. Most of the cysts resolve spontaneously. And all that is needed is clinical and ultrasound follow up. Okay, so clinically they will see it, and then follow up ultrasound. Later on, they will carry out ultrasound, perform ultrasound to see if the cyst is there or not. But what if the cyst actually stays, which we call persistent pseudocyst? When do we call it persistent? If it does not resolve in 6 weeks. 6 weeks is like more than a month. So weeks is like if it's still there, it has to be surgically drained. Waiting for this period is important to allow the development of a strong cyst wall that can hold sutures. Okay, so this is a very interesting point that we need the false cyst to develop a wall. Okay, and this wall will help us. How? Because it can hold sutures, as we will cut it and drain it, and so it has to be sutured. So the cyst is internally drained to the stomach and to the jejunal loop. So the drainage goes to the stomach or to the jejunal loop. As we can see in the photo, cystogastrostomy. What is that? It's done by making an incision in the anterior wall of the stomach. Okay. And then incising the posterior gastric wall and the cyst wall, which are adherent to each other. So you make a cut incision on the anterior front wall of the stomach, and then you incise the posterior gastric wall and the cyst wall, which are adherent to each other. So first you have to cut it from the front to actually reach the posterior gastric wall, right? Like from the inside. And then when you cut the posterior gastric wall, you find the cystic wall, which are almost sticking to each other, right? Adherent. So a continuous interlocking suture will bind the posterior gastric wall to the cyst wall, securing hemostasis and making an opening between the cyst and the stomach. Finally, the anterior wall of the stomach is closed after everything is done. So after the surgery, post-operatively, the cyst gradually disappears because it's draining, right? So the third treatment is endoscopic drainage of the cyst. This is done by endoscopy. Even before the ultrasound was endoscopic. Okay, so endoscopic drainage is feasible in the presence of resources and experience. Of course, you know that endoscopy and endoscopic procedures has to have someone skilled like gastroenterologist. So this is why we say presence of resources and experience. That's it. We are done with the treatment of pancreatic pseudocyst and the investigations.